everybody, my name is Sam. Welcome back to my channel. It's been like a month-ish, right, I think, since I posted my Half-A-Ween-a-thon TBR video. So I should probably, like, update you guys on my book and reading life. I have great news. The year-long reading slump seems to have finally reached its conclusion, which is fantastic news, but it also means that I have a lot of books, too many to put into like a regular recent reads video, which is what I was trying to do with this channel before I stopped posting. So what I'm gonna do is essentially give you guys a everything I've read this year like rundown today, and then going forward I'm gonna do like normal recent reads videos where I update you every like 5 to 10 books that I read. But what happened is I was in a slump, I was trying all these things, I was rereading, I was buddy reading, I was doing all this stuff, and nothing was sticking. And then I did the readathon, and I got through that, but it was still like a little bit touch and go for me. And then like I listened to some audiobooks and like the floodgates just kind of opened, and now I'm back to like reading what I would consider a more normal amount for me. So what I'm doing with this video is I've broken it down into categories, like rather than going through everything I read in chronological order. So the first category is just like rereads that I did with no other purpose in mind. So the first reread that I had for the year, I actually started last year in like, I want to say October or November, and I didn't finish reading until like end of January, maybe? I don't know. But that is Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind. This is the first book in the Sword of Truth series, which was a favorite series of mine in like middle school through like the beginning of high school. I actually picked this book up for the first time on a dare from one of my classmates, which is of course something I've done in my life. That's normal, right? Anyway, so this is my first time reading this book since middle school. Like I read it in 8th grade. And I wanted to see if I still liked these or not. And I do still like them. I still liked this book quite a bit. Probably not as much as I did when I was 14. Just because I'm a different person now. And also because like there's some stuff that happens in here that's definitely like a little weird or like questionable. And when I was a kid, I didn't really pay as close of attention to that kind of thing. But it was still a good time. I still had a good time. I enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to finish rereading the rest of the series because I actually like never finished the last 2 books, and I want to read those. So I want to finish like the rest of the series again before whatever, you get it. Anyway, I'm going to finish it. It's probably going to be a long ongoing project though, because this is one of the shorter books in the series and it's still a fatty. So it's not like my #1 priority, but I am going to finish the series. Why do I never plan for where I'm going to put these? Okay, the next reread I have was the beginning of what I'm going to start referring to as Becky Chambers' Palooza. And that was To Be Taught If Fortunate, which is a novella that is not in the Wayfarers series. So I reread this book because I wanted a like quick audiobook to listen to in between some buddy reads I was doing, I think. It's wonderful. It's perfect. I love Becky Chambers. You all know that. It's amazing. Flawless. 10 out of 10. Read it if you haven't. This book is about a crew from Earth that are on a mission to explore a group of kind of unexplored planets, and it just kind of tells the story of the crew and sort of the events that happen while they're out on their mission and the reason that they might not make it back to Earth. And it's fantastic. Becky Chambers writes characters so well, and she makes you really care about everyone in all of her books, which is kind of impressive because they're all ensemble pieces, and I think it's really an accomplishment for an author to make you care about everyone in a group of characters, and she manages to do it with a different group of characters in every single book. It's wild. It's wonderful. Read it. Next reread I'm going to talk about is also Becky Chambers, and that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I am reading the first 3 books in this series now for the 4th time, which is disgusting, probably. Like, it's so many times. Why did I do that? It's crazy. But I'm rereading this because I'm actually buddy reading it with my friend Amber, who has a channel, Amber Unabridged. I will link it in the description. But she's never read these. I've read them numerous times, and so it's been kind of a fun experience to like reread it with somebody who's experiencing everything for the first time. It's great. If you want to know how I feel about these books, honestly, like, watch any other video on my channel. I talk about them nonstop, so I don't really need to go into it more here. The next category I have on here are my Half-A-Ween-a-thon books, and I only have a physical copy of one of them. So the first thing that I read for Half-A-Ween-a-thon, or the first thing I'm going to talk about for Half-A-Ween-a-thon, is a short story from this short story collection, Irish Tales of Terror. It's not the book I originally, it's not the story I originally put in my TBR. I was having a hard time getting into that one, so I decided to read a different one. And that story is called The Man-Wolf by Geraldus Cambrensis? I don't know, whatever. I'll put it on the screen. I can't read my own handwriting. It was really short, only like 3 pages, I want to say. It was about a priest traveling through Ireland, and he encounters a man who has been, his like people have been cursed to, like, the way it ended up working out is they take turns living as wolves for, I want to say, like 10 years at a time, and he and his wife are currently living as wolves, and his wife is like dying or something, and he needs assistance with his wife. He wants the priest to like give her her last rites. It was a weird story, for sure. It wasn't particularly scary. It did, however, have a couple of really gross moments, like at one point where the priest wants the wolf man to prove that he's actually a man, so he like unzips his skin and shows that there's a man inside. Super weird, super gross, very strange. Definitely something that was written a long time ago, and also definitely something that's like an Irish folk tale, because like they're all weird as fuck, honestly. Next, I read Stranger with My Face by Lois Duncan. This was a reread for me, but I read it for the read a book and watch the adaptation, because I had never seen the movie. Overall, this book is like a pretty good YA, like short horror novel from like the 70s. It's about a girl who, over the course of the story, finds out that not only is she adopted, but she also has a twin sister who turns out to be like kind of an evil twin. And she finds out because her sister has been like astral projecting to come visit her, and chaos ensues. The movie adaptation was all right. Very much a Lifetime movie. Like, it actually was a Lifetime movie, and you could tell. Some of the acting was really good, but some of it was like questionable. And also some of the changes that they made to the story were necessary given some of the casting choices they made, but were also confusing and definitely like sort of fundamentally changed the story. So overall, not totally sure how I felt about it, but I'm glad that I watched it. And finally, for Half-A-Ween-a-thon, I read The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones, and actually I listened to it. I think that impacted how I felt about the story, because I think it's one of those books that would have been better to physically read. It's a super, super meta story about a town where there's like a serial killer, like a slasher villain on the loose, and everybody within the story is very aware of like horror movie tropes and rules and has to live by them to like try to survive. And like the cast of characters is made up of a bunch of people that would fit the like final girl mold. It's super self-aware, it's super weird, super meta. I loved this concept. It was written in like a screenplay format though, and so there were like camera or like stage directives written in, and the scene changes meant that like perspectives shifted a lot, and at times when listening to it, it was a little bit hard to follow, but I think a lot of that would have been resolved by just physically reading it instead. Next category were all of the other things that I tried to read during my reading slump. First, I have Artemis, Fowl by Owen Colfer. This series was a favorite of my husband's when he was growing up, and I had never read them. And so I decided to give the first one a shot, and I really liked it. I probably would have been obsessed with these if I had read the series when I was a kid. Artemis as a main character is super interesting. He's really smart and super capable, but he's not an action hero. Also, I really thought his relationships with other characters, with like his mother, with his like estranged father, with his butler named Butler, and Butler's sister, they're all super interesting and super like multi-dimensional and dynamic. And you kind of learn a lot about him as a character through his relationships with these other characters, and I just think it's really well done. Plus, tech-based, like sci-fi-ish fantasy is just super cool, super fun, really interesting, and I love it. It's great. Next, I have Drag Teen. I have a physical copy of this one. Drag Teen by Jeffrey Self, which is just a fun contemporary YA story about a young gay boy finding himself, finding his confidence, and how that improves his relationship with his family and his friends. But yeah, it was a fun journey. It was like a road trip story about friends and going to a drag pageant. It was really cool. It did tie up a little bit too nicely at the end, but I mean, it's like a contemporary rom-com type story, so I suppose I should have expected that. And it was still a fun ride. I had a good time. So the next one was another like contemporary-ish YA story. It was called Rebel Girls by Elizabeth Keenan. It's about like a girl going through Catholic school who gets really into like the riot girl punk scene and decides to like make some changes in her school, like within the system, when a really nasty rumor starts spreading about her little sister. And for me, as a girl who went through Catholic school in the 90s and is also into angry woman music, this hit me right in the nostalgia bone. It gave me some flashbacks to my youth for sure, but it wasn't necessarily a brilliantly written book. Like, it felt nostalgic. It gave me like some feels in that regard, but the book itself, it felt like the message that the author was trying to send was a little bit forced at times, and some of the characters were just like relatively flat. The ones that were more interesting, I wish I learned more about, but like we didn't get much of the characters that seemed like they had the most interesting backstories. That's fine, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you too are an angry girl who went to Catholic school and would like to be hit right in the childhood. Next, I have The Hole by Hiroko Oyamada, which is a Japanese novella that's sort of supposed to be like a modern day Alice in Wonderland. I buddy read this with Amber from Amber Unabridged and Sue from Spinebreakers, and it was wild. I definitely would not describe it as a modern day Alice in Wonderland. I would describe it as leaving you with more questions than answers. I don't want to go too deep into this because I actually filmed a full review of this with Amber, who had way more to say about it because she's way more well-versed in Japanese books than I am. It's not posted yet, but it will be eventually, and it will be posted on a channel that is not this one that I will link in the description. So if you want to see what we thought about it, go check out that channel. Next, I read We Ride Upon Sticks by Kwonberry. This book was just super fun. It was a late 80s like high school sports story about field hockey with witches. This would be absolutely a great thing to read if you are a fan of both Heathers and Hocus Pocus. It's like a non-spooky witch story with like dark comedy that takes place in the late 80s. It's lovely. Then I read Interference by Sue Burke. This is a sequel to the book called Semiosis by Sue Burke, which I read for, I think, like the second round of Tome Infinity and Beyond. Anyway, this series is about a planet that is like a twin to Earth that gets settled by a group of humans who wanted to leave Earth, and they discover that there is sentient plant life on this planet. The books together kind of explore like humanity and like our relationships with each other and also with other species, and also specifically these humans' relationship with this one sentient plant and how it evolves over time. And they're really good. I like them a lot. I'm actually going to be finally one of these days making a video where I recommend sci-fi books about plants, and this series is definitely going to be in that video. So if you're interested in reading books that are sci-fi, that are about sentient plant life, these would be good ones to check out. They're great. I like them a lot. And then the final category is what I will describe as when the floodgates opened, the things that I read. And most of this is cozy mysteries. It's actually specifically 2 cozy mystery series, which are both like paranormal cozy mysteries. The first of those series that like really reopened the floodgates for me was the Vampire Knitting Club. I listened to books 1 and 2. I originally heard about these on the Stitch and Bitch live show that takes place once a month. I will link all 4 of the channels that are responsible for that live show in the description if I remember. I don't know, these were just like, it was a fun time. It's a really cheesy series, but I have been loving it. It's about this 27-year-old girl who inherits her grandmother's knitting shop and then discovers that underneath the knitting shop there is a nest of vampires, and all of the vampires come up like twice a week, I want to say, and they have a little knitting circle. And then also like murders happen in the town, and it's a cozy mystery, so she tries to solve the murders with the help of her vampire friends. It's adorable. It's cheesy as shit. These are the perfect thing to listen to on audiobook while you're working on arts and crafts. I love them. And then, because I was having issues with my, initially with my script and then also with my Hoopla, totally my own fault, not Hoopla's fault. I let my library card expire and then totally forgot about it. But because I was having that issue, I ended up having to borrow some different audiobooks, even though I wanted to continue that series. So I borrowed the first 4 books from Scribd in the Witch of Edgehill cozy mystery series. I had actually already read the first 2 because I had gotten NetGalley arcs of them like a couple years ago, and I liked them a lot, and this was a great way for me to continue the series. So these books are super fun. It's witches, there's murder mysteries, there's small town charm, and there's lots of cat content. It's just beautiful. It's lovely. They're wonderful. Could not recommend them more. They're great. And then finally, because I have to have something to complain about in a video, I read the Jane Austen Book Club by Karen Joy Fowler. This book sucked. I hated it. I do not recommend it. It came out in like 2004, but somehow read like a book that came out in the 1960s and not in a good way. I just feel like the whole time I was just like, I just had like an uncomfortable feeling reading it. There was some really gross and questionable language choices made to describe a character with Down syndrome that was only mentioned really in passing, but I didn't like it, and it happened really early on. But also, and to a lesser extent, but it also annoyed me a lot because it was much more persistent throughout the book, these characters really hate genre fiction. Like, they hate anything that isn't like Jane Austen or one of the Brontes. They're just really like snotty about books that aren't the books that they read. And as a person who reads almost exclusively genre fiction, it was like a little bit of a bummer to me. Okay, so that is everything I've read this year so far. It was a lot. I think it was like 19 things. I was like, oh, I started reading again. I should film a recent reads video. And then I was like sat down to like take some notes, and I was like, oh, I read a lot more than I thought I did. I should definitely film that. So anyway, let me know if you guys have read any of these, what you think, what else you've been reading, what you think I should read now that I'm reading again. Tell me a joke or a story or a fun little anecdote. Make fun of how much of a mess this video is, because it is a mess, friends. And yeah, have a great day, guys.